So to no one's surprise, the dev server is live to the entire community, which really comes as no surprise at all, because whenever Gaijin does any sort of dev server stuff or streams, they tend to release it to the public the very next day. Now, there are a couple of things I want to go ahead and disclose to you guys before we go ahead and get started. I know a lot of you are just currently looking at the GE amount right here and are wondering, how the hell do you get so much of it? Well, this is something that isn't really clarified quite well to the community. I am a Gaijin content partner, or a CC, so we do get access to all of the new vehicles in the dev server alongside a very generous amount of golden eagles. In fact, if you guys want to tell me exactly how much that is in actual cost, like how much money is required for it, that'd be a very interesting thing to know down in the comments, so feel free to let me know. You guys do the math. I'm terrible at that. But point being, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at all the vehicles that I have found to be very interesting. I won't be going through every single vehicle being added. There's just quite a bit, to be honest. Not as much as you would think, but just enough to really make it so that it won't be a super long video. If you guys want to go watch the other creators' super long videos going into pure detail, more power to you. I'm just going through all the things that I found interesting. So let's get started with the M1A1HC. In truth, there's not a whole lot special about this vehicle outside of a single thing, and that is the fact that it has a dazzler. Yeah, in truth, I had no idea the M1A1s at any given point had a dazzler system. In fact, it was just, when I heard about it having it, I thought immediately, oh boy, this is going to be interesting. But let's be very honest here. This is nothing more but than M1A2 without a CITV. I kid you not, instead of the CITV, you get a dazzler system. That is really it. Same one as you would find with the Stora. I don't really know the angle of effect or engagement, etc. with the Dazzler. I guess it's probably a very small cone. But through and through, this is basically an M1A2. It gets the M829A1, which is the same found in the M1A2. It does get the M830A1, which is the MPAT round, which is, in my opinion, very useless. Gaijin has nerfed this thing to the point where there's almost no point to bring it out. At least not in my opinion. It doesn't one-tap helicopters. It doesn't even three-tap them. You have to hit them almost direct with it. So, which kind of nullifies the reasoning as to why you would want to use this anymore. But aside from that, Generation 1 thermal sight for the gunner. Same mobility, same level of protection, similar to that of the M1A2. I'm not even kidding. This thing is an exact copy-paste, with the only exception being the Dazzler system. And in truth, that's really it. But let me be more honest and more upfront with you guys. This system doesn't really matter in top tier. There are very few missile systems that this thing will effectively counter against. The only things you'll really be fighting are 9M 119M1s, I think it is. I forget the name of the missile, to be honest. It's the one the Russians had, the T-80BVM, the T-72B3, etc. Cornets, ADATS missiles if you're going against your own team. And, of course, helicopters, Vickers missiles, Hellfires, TOWs, etc. I think TOWs are the only things really affected by this, and other small wire-guided stuff, maybe from BMP-2s, etc. That's the only thing. But even then, you really won't be fighting those types of vehicles at this respective tier, which, in all honesty, makes this kind of useless. But hey, you know what? This is more or less thanks for following me on Twitch, by the way. So this is more or less just the middle ground between the M1A1 and the M1A2, kind of just fleshing out the entire lineup for the Americans. Instead of having just a single single top tier Abrams, you now have two. And that adds on to the, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, now 6 Abrams? Yeah, so, and there's more coming too at some point. Just stay tuned for that. And the next thing the Americans are getting is the YAH-64 Squadron vehicle. Now, this thing was teased out a while ago during a leaked trailer. I think it was almost a year ago at this point now. And it was shown there, and people thought, oh, this is going to be the premium one. This is going to be something. But in all actuality, it wasn't. In fact, what this is this is nothing more but a squadron vehicle. I cannot tell you, unfortunately, how much it's going to cost. I think it's going to be about 490 or 410,000 squadron points. That is my guess, okay? I was given this vehicle, so I can't really tell you. I'll tell you once it gets into the live server, once we do a little review, the official review of this vehicle or overview. But aside from that, this is nothing more but a very, very basic Apache. There is no missile approach warning system. There are no flares. All you have is, of course, thermal sight, ballistic computer, and up to 16 Hellfires, as you are very limited with the type of ordnance you're going to be bringing out. Of course, you're going to be using the Hydra rockets as your start when you're trying to spade this thing, but in truth, that's going to be a little bit of a struggle. And on a more personal note, I'm not really a fan of Gaijin introducing a helicopter that is more easily attainable outside of the norm by grinding out helicopters. Instead, you can just put in your squadron points and you can eventually unlock this helicopter, which kind of adds on to the very, I would like to say, sort of oversaturated environment at top tier with helicopters, where they can be incredibly overbearing. And I know there's going to be a lot of newer players who are going to immediately get this thing and think, this is the best thing ever, only to get slapped by Vickers missiles and SPAAs, etc., etc. So it kind of leaves a lot to really be desired. But this is still a very welcome addition. Nonetheless, it's not really well protected for the most part. It is a helicopter with no countermeasures to speak of, no air-to-air missiles, nothing in terms of defense outside of a ballistic computer for that gun. So take that as you absolutely will. So let's go over to the next one, Germany. So Germany didn't really get anything new, at least not really from what I've noticed. And I've actually missed something really quick. Let me go ahead and pull that out really quick. The MiG-21MF, let's just go ahead and equip that somewhere. We'll just put you right here just because. Now, there really isn't a whole lot to really talk about. The Martyr 1A3 has finally arrived, which I fully expected this variant to come out simply because it adds on to the existing Martyr, which is thermal sights. That's it. If you were looking for something special, there really isn't anything else. It's the same exact Martyr. It's a little bit heavier for the most part because it does have some add-on armor, but I really don't want to go into detail about that because no matter what, if everything and pretty much anything that looks at you, you're probably going to die. You have the same Milan missile. You have now 20mm DM63 with 60mm or 66mm of flat pen, which is probably going to be something you're going to want to focus on because you're going to be going to flank and spank as well as hitting your enemies from the sides. But even then, I kind of found it to be a little bit difficult to use it, even against T-55s, etc. I mean, unless you get directly behind them, you're not really going to do too much outside of using the Milan missile, and you only get, I believe, 4 of them. There it is, only 4 missiles, and they're pretty good, don't get me wrong, but you also get thermal sights. Unfortunately, it's only for the gunner and the commander and apparently the driver too, which is really nice, but it's Gen 1. And that's really something that isn't too exciting in my opinion because you have a pretty, what I like to consider a potato platform with thermal sights sitting at battle rating 8.0. And I understand the reasoning as to why this is at battle rating 8.0 because let's be honest here. Given all the new capabilities of this vehicle, which is just thermal sight, it doesn't really belong there, but I fully understand it. You really don't want a 7.7 or a 7.3 PR vehicle with thermal sights because it'll make this thing just a little bit overbearing towards the other vehicles at that respective battle rating because imagine a World War II tank fighting against a vehicle wielding thermal sights. Won't exactly be a fun experience, at least not in my opinion. But aside from that, the Martyr 1A3 is here. Take that as you will. Now, the reason why I brought the MiG-21MF is because it is now getting flares. Check that out. That is a pod for flares. So to my aviation guys out there, you now have flares in chaff. It does carry, I believe, 64 flares, which is really good. It does look very ugly in my opinion, and it does kind of affect the flight performance of the vehicle itself, but you guys now have flares. Take that as you absolutely will. And the last thing the Germans are getting, now be prepared for this one. I had no idea it was coming, and it looks incredibly funny. The BV-138C1. I mean, it looks like Germany stole a PBY or PB4Y and a P61 and kind of put them together, and this is what you get. I mean, it has good firepower. I mean, 20mm for the front and back, and you have a 13mm, I believe, for the top-mounted gun up here for good defense, and you only get 50-kilogram bombs. Yeah, with 25 kilograms of explosive mass. That's funny, actually, but just look. I don't even know what to think about this thing. It looks like Igor that flies. Does that make sense? I'll let you guys take that as you will, my 1.7 pilots out there. Okay, so up next, one of the stars of the show, the Russians. The first thing I want to talk about is the 2S25, also known as the Sprut. Now, I don't know which version of the Sprut SD this is. It could be the Sprut, it could be the SD version. I have no idea. I'm not too well versed with this vehicle, but What this basically is a 906 in up tier. That's pretty much it. But there is a twist to it. It may be fast, 78 kilometers an hour. It can go reverse the same speed as well, which is very nice, albeit you have no armor. You have 20 millimeters of armor all the way around in the turret, etc. So if something looks at you, you're pretty screwed for the most part. But thankfully, it does have a few good things. First thing being is the level of firepower this vehicle has. Now, it is a 125 millimeter gun. Excuse me, I just got done with a almost 3-hour stream showcasing the dev, so I'm kind of repeating myself a lot, so bear with me, guys. It does get a plethora of shells. It gets, of course, Heat FS. It gets a 30F26, which is the fragmentation round everyone knows and love and hates at the same time. It does get 3M22 as a tier 1 modification. The 9M119 ATGM as a tier 3 modification, and then of course the beloved 3BM42, which recently did get a tiny bit of a nerf at the flat degree pen, but I believe a buff at the 30 and I believe 60 as well. But it does get the Mango round, which is not quite the 470 plus. I think they were meaning the 9M119, unless they're giving this the Sphinx round or maybe the Lacalo or something. I have no idea if it does come in anyways. But aside from that, it does unfortunately suffer from a very long amount of reload. 8.6 seconds with an auto-loading mechanism, which is kind of a shame in my opinion. 8.6 seconds is very rough, but I totally understand it given the vehicle's level of mobility. And so it really kind of brings into question, how is this vehicle, or is this vehicle going to be playing as? Well, that all really depends on the optics of the vehicle itself. Check this out. If we go into X-ray view really quick, you'll see gunner sight 8 times. Not exactly the best, but it does make up for it just a little bit in the commander optics of 1 times to 8 times, which does have a commander gunner, which is something that I can really appreciate. But take a look at the amount of ammunition in this thing. If you get shot at with such light armor, holy crap, this thing is going to pop open very, very quickly. But I guess the name of the game for this vehicle is definitely speed. Oh, and by the way, it has very good turret traverse too. Check that out. Actually, where is it? Right here. Is this it? Yeah, 55 degrees of targeting speed, which is really good, but it kind of lacks in the vertical targeting speed of 10 degrees a second going up and down, which is, I guess, kind of given. It's way better than some of the other Russian tanks, but it's kind of a given for the most part. So keep that in mind when you are playing this, what I like to call top tier light tank, but still doesn't really quite compare to, say, the CV9120. At least not in my opinion. But moving forward just a little bit. Now, I did bring out the MiG-21 SMT, as this is still a very popular vehicle. But as you see right here, it also gets flares. Yeah, that's pretty neat, isn't it? It also gets flares, which is pretty cool. It does mess up the aerodynamic of the aircraft itself, but for the most part, you know how it flares. About 64 as well. Same as the MF. Kind of enjoy that. I believe other MiGs also get it too, but we won't take the time to look into that. So let's take a look at the very last vehicle, the star of the show, the MiG-27M, as you see right here with the, this is the purchasable camo pattern for this vehicle itself. Now, what you see right here is the Cab 60s, I think they're called. The Cab 500s, excuse me. Now, these are laser-guided bombs, basically, okay? In truth, I don't think they're ready, or they're TV-guided, excuse me. I don't think they're really ready. They kind of feel like dump bombs. Does that kind of make sense? Are these the Cat 500s, actually? Which one am I looking at? No, these are definitely it right here. They feel very gimmicky, at least in my opinion. Not something I really can see be used appropriately in the high-tier environment for ground RB, but possibly in sim setting, I can definitely see this be worthwhile. It doesn't quite play like Mavericks, unfortunately, but I think there's still a little bit of refinement that needs to be done before the vehicle itself can be made a little bit more efficient, at least in my opinion. And this all stems to the ground pounding capability. That main 30mm gun sounds highly impressive. Take my word for it. I would show you, but we don't exactly have too much time for that, as I want to keep the time of the video down as low as I possibly can. It does get ground belt, of course, but it only pens up to 65mm of base pen, 48 at 30, 25 at 60, with gradual drop off at distance, which you'll be having plenty of. It can get the job done for the most part, but it's a little rough in my opinion. You also get only 300 rounds, and it goes by very, very quickly, and 12, of course, countermeasures. But here's another cool thing about the vehicle that I totally forgot to show you guys really quick. Let me go ahead and find it really quick. Here they are right here. Now, these are the KH-29T missiles. Basically, kind of like Mavericks, kind of not. They have the same guidance system as you would find with the Mavericks for the most part. I found them to be just a little bit gimmicky as well. But then again, this is a brand new system in the game, and I don't believe it is very much refined. But take my word for when I say nice to have a little bit of a rough experience, at least for the dev server itself. Now, here's one thing a lot of people will not appreciate. It sits below the bomber line. I don't know if this is going to stay right here. I would definitely like to see this above the MiG-23M, as it is more or less the successor to this vehicle, at least from what I've been told. And it's sitting in the bomber line. As you can see right here, I don't have my bomber line complete. So it's going to be a little bit of a while before we go ahead and get this vehicle, unless Gaijin decides to give it to me, which may or may not happen. We'll definitely see. But aside from that, that is what you can fully expect with this bad boy. You do also get R60s. You do get R13M1s, which I personally don't use at all. In fact, I rarely use this aircraft for dogfighting anyway, or at least the 23 version anyways. But yeah, that's what you have to look forward to. So feel free to check that out over in the dev server if you guys want to go ahead and get a more detailed experience with it, or check out some of the awesome other amazing creators, Copsy, Spitfire, Ash, and Adam the Engineer, etc. All those other fantastic creators who will be playing this thing and using it to very good effect. So with that being said, let's take a look at the next one, the British, I think. So next up is the British. We have the Vickers Mark III. Now, this is the only ground asset that I can currently find that is new into the game itself. There really isn't anything else to really look forward to aside from this vehicle. Now, what is this? Well, think of it as the Vickers MBT, the 7.71, and just kind of give it a more, I guess, streamlined turret. The armor, the protection of this vehicle is exactly the same. There is really nothing different about this vehicle protection-wise. It does have decent mobility, 55 kilometers an hour, but here's where things get a little bit more interesting. It does get APDS, of course, but it also gets the M456 Heat FS shell. Night vision is standard, but you get a laser rangefinder, which does automatically set your gun sights to be able to engage targets immediately at distance. What this allows you to do is, well, you're able to snipe targets at a significant distance incredibly accurately. I really wouldn't rely too much on the Heat FS, as I do like to play with APDS around this BR, unless I'm fighting some more of the heavier vehicles, which we'll get more into a little bit later. Here are the gunner optics. They're not overly impressive, but they're not terrible either. 4.9 times to 6 times with the sight FOV of 15 to 12. FOV means your field of view, which is how much picture you have in your gunner's sight. So how much of the environment you can see while in the gunner's sight. I have to clarify that because people have been asking me for quite some time. You also do get commander optics, which is very impressive. 1 times to 10 times the sight FOV of 80 degrees to 7. That's really nuts, actually. And you do get a commander gunner, which means that you're able to utilize the entirety of the system in the commander view, which with an automatic laser rangefinder, it does make things a little bit more interesting, especially in the sim environment, at least in my opinion. But aside from that, that's it. That's what you're really looking forward to with the Vickers. It has some decent reverse rates, 12.8 kilometers an hour, so making shooting and scooting very viable. But here's another vehicle that is a little bit more interesting, and that is the Shackleton. Hey, Shackleton? You guys know what I mean, okay? It's been a long day for me already. Now, this is basically a long-range bomber. That's it. But what makes this so special, besides its ordnance right here, which you can see, 1,000-pound bombs, RP3s, you know, everyone knows the RP3s, 250-pound bombs, 500-pound bombs, etc., etc. So it's nothing more but a long-range bomber, but it has what appears to be an anti-submarine warfare system, if that makes sense. I think I'm using that correctly. What this basically allows it to do is, I guess this is the system to scan for them. I don't know if it's via sonar or something else for that matter, or electronic. I have no idea, to be honest. But what I can tell you is that this thing does protrude in normal flights, kind of making it so that players have been calling it, I don't know, the plane's peen. That's what people have been calling it for whatever reason. I'm sorry if I'm using that weird, but that's how players have been calling it. It does ruin the aerodynamic of the aircraft itself, but this thing is a bomber. It's not going to turn, and it's not going to dogfight anyways. But that creates a very interesting subject. Are we going to get submarines in the near future? Well, if Silent Thunder has anything to say about that, it might become a possibility, which will make naval a little bit more interesting. And sorry to say we're not covering naval in today's video, but aside from that, not really well armored for the most part. It's got 20 millimeters all over the place. No rear gun, only front gun, and only top mounted gun here, and a lot of crew, a lot of gunners apparently. I think this vehicle is not complete yet, so there might be some things added to it a little bit later, but who knows? This is only the first dev server. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the Japanese. There's a couple of things I want to go ahead and point out with the Japanese. The STV1 is in this lineup because, unfortunately, it now loses its Heat FS. I don't know if this is live in the actual server itself, but I just noticed that here in the dev server, it no longer gets Heat FS, which I can fully understand. Seeing that this is a 7.7 vehicle with a good stabilizer and decent armor for the most part, I can kind of understand the reasoning as to why this is no longer getting Heat FS. Now, up next is the M19A1, which is nothing too impressive, to be honest. Battle rating 5.0, it's not something really worthwhile to look into. I've never really liked these platforms, to be honest, but I'll kind of let you guys enjoy that. Next up is the Type 87 RCV. Now, this is a very unique vehicle. It's very fast, 112 kilometers an hour. This is spaded, by the way, and it has one crucial thing, the PMB-09 or the 09, which is the same round, I believe, found in the Dardo. Now, this is a very good sable round, and you do get plenty of ammunition to play with. 92mm base pen, of course. If you're familiar with a Dardo at any given level, this is basically it. Now, you don't get thermal sights. You don't even get night vision. You don't even get a rangefinder of any sort. No optical, no laser rangefinder. But what you do get is a stabilized gun platform sitting at battle rating 7.3. That's the kicker right there. 7.3. You have no armor, though. 10 millimeters all over the place with some 20, of course, 20 in the turret. But for the most part, if 50 cal looks at you from the side, you're going to die. If 20 millimeter looks at you from the front, you're going to die. Simple as that. It does get some very good optics. 1.9 times to 3.5 times. That's actually pretty nuts. It's something I can deeply enjoy. And the commander sights 1.0 times to 1.0, excuse me, to 4 times, which is also very good. And the commander can fire the main weapon. But seeing that you have, you may have quite a few amount of crew in here, but look how tight they are. Just look how compact. Yeah, it's going to make for a very rough experience, at least in my opinion. But you have a very fast wheelie boy with some very good firepower. Now, let's take a look at the Type 74C. Sorry, guys, my voice is kind of wearing out right now, so bear with me, okay? Now, the Type 74C is just basically another Type 74. It is above the STB and right below, I believe, the Type 74E, which, by the way, did get a rename. As you can see right here, this was the normal Type 74, but they renamed it to the E version, which does make sense. Now, what does this introduce? In truth, just one thing. This right here. The M735 APFSD is the same round found on the XM1, found as a stock round for many of the higher tier vehicles, but here's the problem with this. The vehicle sits at battle rating 8.0. It has a laser rangefinder, it has a sable round, and it has night vision. This is a Type 74 at 8.0. It doesn't really make sense to me. I don't really see this as 8.0. I see this more as an 8.3 at the very least, 8.7 at the very most. So, in truth, I don't know what Gaijin's reasoning is for this to be at 8.0. I personally wouldn't like to see it there. It would be nice to give Japan something very nice to kind of play with a little bit, but in truth, I really think it belongs at a higher BR so that those 7.0s don't suffer too much with a stabilized platform, a very good gun, and decent armor for the most part, and a laser rangefinder at that too. So take that as you absolutely will. Now, the F4EJ Kai, I think it is, or something, the F4 Phantom, is not here yet. I know it was kind of leaked a little bit, but it's not here. It might be coming very soon. Who knows? But let's take a look at the next one, the Chinese. I'm going to make this very quick and easy. This is nothing more but a copy-paste vehicle. I'm not even kidding. The Type 99, 2, and the 3 are exactly the same. Sure, welded turret. It's a little bit stronger for the most part, but only by a couple of millimeters. I don't know if it's just a modeling issue. Maybe it's in the dev server or something, but it's essentially the exact same vehicle. You have the same not active protection system, the laser warning system. You do get the same level of firepower, the DTW 125, the same T1 modification shell, the same fragmentation round, Generation 2 thermal sights, CITV, same mobility. In fact, so much so that it's the exact same weight. Both this vehicle and the 2 are 51.0 tons. Same reload. There's really nothing fancy about this vehicle, but it's not necessarily a bad thing because that means that Japan, or excuse me, China, gets a second top tier MBT, albeit it's more of like the situation with the Japanese, where they get the Type 90 and the Type 90B, which are functionally the exact same vehicle. This is more or less the same thing. So I can very much respect that and fully understand it. But at the same time, it's like, it kind of throws a bone here. Nothing really too special in my opinion, but it is what it is. But next up, we have the A5C. Now, this is a premium, basically, Q5. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about this bad boy. Just know that at battle rating 10.3, this is going to more or less be a K50 situation because it does get the R550 Matra R550 Magic 1 air-to-air missiles, which are exceedingly good. These are very good air-to-air missiles, and you get 2 of them. Ground pounding, sure, but here's the problem with this. You do not get a ballistic computer. That's right. You have all this ordnance right here, and you think, oh, it's a good ground pounder, right? You don't have a ballistic computer. So it's kind of difficult to use that, especially when you start hitting supersonic speeds, which this thing can't get to very easily. It makes it so that it's a little bit of a rough experience to use all those bombs and rockets when you just can't really be accurate on the fly, especially in top tier, where SAM systems will reign supreme. That's right. 2S6, ADATs, the British ADATs, etc., can and will destroy you very quickly. So if you don't have that accurate bomb drop, you're going to be in for a rough ride. And at this given price, well, I'll leave that to all my aviation experts out there, as this channel just isn't for it. So up next, the Italians. 2 things. Just 2. The F104G, which does have flares, which is really neat, and it only gets AIM-9Bs. But if you're familiar with the F104s, that's all it gets. And it gets a good amount of them, too. I mean, it gets, I think 80 or 64. I do forget, but it does get them. That's kind of a given. I'll let my aviation pilots out there kind of look into this one and see whether or not it is a worthwhile vehicle. I have no idea if there's anything different, more powerful engine, etc., etc. So let's take a look at the next vehicle in this lineup. The C-13 T-90. Now, what is this? This is basically a Dardo with an obel turret at 7.0. This is the joke I like to make. Now, imagine... This is the obel, right here. Let me go and just do this right here. Yeah, this is the obel 74 that just came back from grandma's house. And what happens when you go to a Spanish grandmother's house? Well, the bottom end of you will kind of look like this. Trust me, as someone who's Spanish, I know that feeling. Well, kind of the same thing. You know what I mean, okay? Italian, Spanish, they all share the same culture, okay, for the most part. All right, and that's exactly what you would expect from this thing. Aside from that, this is nothing more but the obel 74. Well, the turret anyways. Same level of firepower. It's decent for the most part. You do get hash, you do get smoke rounds, and it's pretty quick too. 78 kilometers an hour, but you have almost no armor. Let me go ahead and just show this real quick. Yeah, anything that looks at you, you're pretty much dead. Simple as that. Maybe not quite down here if you angle yourself correctly, but for the most part, you're going to die because take a look at all that ammunition. Although the crew is kind of separated from the engine, it doesn't really help too much. But hey, you know what? Take that as you absolutely will. At least you got a 7.62 up here. Never mind. Yeah, I guess off to the next one, which is a very sad one. The French. I'm really sorry to report, the only thing the French will be getting, at least in the first dev server, is the F8E. Now, I understand that the Americans did also get this, and I'll compare the two in just a quick moment here. Now, what does this get over the American counterpart? Not a whole lot, to be honest. The wings still rip incredibly easily, over 1,000 kilometers an hour. Kind of translate that to knots if you guys want to. And it does rip quite easily, unfortunately. But you do get a couple of good things with this thing, which is just air-to-air loadouts. 0 ground pounding capabilities. You do get the Matra R530 air-to-air missiles, which are radar-guided, and AIM-9Bs alongside the 550 Magic 1s, which are very good air-to-air missiles, at least in my experience. So that's honestly really it. That's all you really get with this thing. And the American counterpart, as you can see right here, if we go to the modification tab or secondary weapons, it gets a shit ton of ammunition and ordnance. Holy crap. Bullpups, you get bombs, you get Zunis, you get Mighty Mouse rockets, you get AIM-9Ds, which are pretty decent for the most part. You get 2,000-pound bombs. You get a mixture of pretty much everything for that matter. So in all honesty, the American counterpart is, in my opinion, significantly better. Now, let's go to the next star of the show, the Swedish. And so here it is, the JA-37 Vigan? Is that how you say it? I hope that's how you say it. Now, this is the other star of the show. But before I go ahead and do that, I have a lot of Swedish friends. Okay, I know you guys all watch this. You guys all tell me, like, it's not Mr. Moon, you know? It's just Nästa Mal or something like that. I have no idea how to say it. Very Spanish, sorry. But I'm going to do something just to annoy you guys just a little bit, okay? Check out this beautiful aircraft. And then once we get over to the tail over here, what's that? Oh boy. Yeah. Mike Goes Boom decided to join in the stream today and decided to just let me have those for the dev server. And I can't thank him enough for that because this is absolutely hilarious. And no, you will not unsee it. I promise. But back to the actual aircraft itself. Sorry, I had to have a little bit of fun with that one. Okay, the stream absolutely loved it and kind of flamed me for it. Maybe you guys will kind of do the same. Who knows? But hey, you know what? Looking on the actual vehicle itself that has been defiled by anime, take a look at this secondary weapon right here. It's not overly impressive when it comes to ground pounding. You do get the 13.5 cm rockets here, which are okay for the most part. I don't believe you get a ballistic computer. I haven't really noticed it, to be honest. But you do get a plethora of course, rockets and missiles here. Check this out. RB-24Js, which is very nice. You also get the RB-71 radar-guided missiles. I haven't used them. I can't say how good they are or how not good they are, but in truth, they look really badass. Check that out. This is the also custom skin, not the custom, excuse me. The skin you can purchase with the vehicle for 200 GE if you decide to do that. Aside from that, it's very impressive. I mean, take a look at that thrust to weight ratio. It's pretty damn good for the most part. But hey, you know what? This thing, unfortunately, does not get flares. That's probably the biggest thing that kind of annoyed people. Why do the MiG-21s, SMT, MF, etc. All have flares, but not this thing? There might be a future version of it that does, perhaps maybe even a module package or something that gives it flares, but for the most part, this is one thing that did upset a lot of my viewers, a lot of my friends too, so kind of take that as you will. It's very nice to be able to get something in here like this. Now up next is another aircraft, the J-35A. This is basically the J-35 we have in the game, except that it only gets AIM-9Bs. And it gets the M5060 rockets, of course, but you only get four, RB-24s, which are basically AIM-9Bs. But here's the thing about this aircraft. It has a significantly less powerful engine. Check that out. Max thrust, 5,000 kilogram force. Afterburner, 7,070, right? Now, if I go ahead and take a look at, say, the Draken over here, you can see it has a better engine. Check that out. Am I the right one? Yes, I am. Okay, 5930, 8370. Kind of see where I'm getting at with this. So a battery rating 10.0, not the best thrust. Does turn very well for the most part, and you only get RB-24s. So balancing, I totally understand it, but it is what it is. Now, off to the next one, the PBV-301. In truth, there's not a whole lot to say about this. Battle Ring 3.0, I expect Iron Armenian to make an 8-hour-long video talking about this vehicle and why War Thunder is dying. You can go look at his Twitter post. He has it up there, and someone did save it. Aside from that, 20mm gun found on the Leopard 2K, not overly impressive, and that's it. No armor. Small vehicle for the most part. 2 crew, no armor. I really don't get the purpose of this vehicle. It does sit at 3.0, so it might do very good for the most part. Aside from that, there really isn't anything overly special about this vehicle, but take that as you will. So there it is. That is, well, at least the more interesting ones I found for myself when it comes to all the new vehicles being introduced in the next major update. Now, I understand this information was already covered by those with the dev stream and is currently being covered by many other amazing creators out there. And so I implore you guys, go ahead and give them a look-see, not just here, if you want some more run-through stuff or more detailed things, that is. So anyways, with all that being said, that's all I got for you today. We're just showing the MiG-27M because this is a very beautiful aircraft. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Russian design. In truth, I mean, I am a quote-unquote Russian main, so I deeply enjoy most of what they introduce. But aside from that, that's all you're getting today. Now, I will do my best to cover as much as I can during the initial, I guess, month of its release, most notably with the 2S25 or the Spruts, as well as the M1A1HC. I think the HC might actually be the first vehicle I do cover through normal, process of this channel, of course. And I look forward to seeing you guys there for that upcoming video where I go far more into detail about what I think about this vehicle, putting it through its paces, and giving my final thoughts on how this performs at its battle rating, at where it sits, and why it was here, and so on and so forth. But we'll get into that as time goes on. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know down in the comment section below. My Discord link is also down there as well in the description. And one more thing too, I did forget to mention at the beginning of this ending part, is I know I missed a lot. I know I did. I know I missed a bunch of new features, new shell types, probably for the Char 25T. All the naval assets, just not really my thing, to be honest. So I'll let others who know what they're doing, Flambast or something, Flamu, to go do that stuff. Did I say it right? I hope I said it right. Okay, I'll let them cover all that really cool stuff. Aside from that, we're only covering mostly just tanks and some ground pounding stuff for certain vehicles. But again, I want to know what you guys think. Is this update very eventful? At least with me, not really, but I'll save that for the actual videos themselves. But until then, guys, I hope you guys did enjoy everything. If you want to see this gameplay live, you know where to find me over on Twitch. Link is down in the description below as always. And I apologize, I'm a little the stream just kind of wore me out a little bit. So my voice is a little shot. So that being said, I'll see you guys not only in the next video or even the streams, but in War Thunder itself. Until next time.